While mainstream comic books largely focus on exciting stories of good versus evil, over the decades, comics have also given us a host of truly iconic romantic couples. From the pulps of the 1920s to the manga of today, comic books have featured inspiring, and sometimes tragic, tales of heroes and even villains in love. So for our 2025 Valentine's Day special, the Great Pop Culture Debate is pulling out the long boxes and diving into comic book history as we discuss the best comic book couples of all time. I'm one part Clark Kent and one part Lois Lane, and 100% here for Henry Cavill's shirtless gifs. I'm your host, Eric Resniak. Please help me welcome my panel for this debate. First up, much like Gambit, he'll call you Cher. Much like Rogue, it's best not to touch him. It's Brendan Hay.
Thank you, Eric. But when I call you Cher, it's only because I'm trying to turn back time.
Well, I'm glad, because I'm going to preemptively take back the words that hurt you in this debate. Next, when it comes to me time, his search words are spandex, handcuffs, and the Phoenix Force. From the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast, please welcome special guest Brad Gullickson.
And I never use private mode.
I don't even know her, but I am here for the handcuffs and the Phoenix Force specifically. And finally, superhero in the streets, superhero in the sheets. She's a giving lover who is not afraid of doing some heavy lifting. Please welcome Lisa Gullickson from Comic Books Couples Counseling.
I'm not available, but I want everyone to know what a great person I am.
Yes, come through and get us out from under Wonder Woman. Up in the producer booth, we have Bob Erlenbach, who will play the silent Black Bolt to my Medusa, who never shuts up. If you're curious about how we ended up with this Super 16, become a Patreon supporter of the podcast, or listen to the 3-minute preview available wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, you can head to this episode on greatpopculturedebate.com to find the listener bracket so you can play along with us at home. And with that out of the way, let's leave the Fortress of Solitude and head into these debates. First up, our panel had a unanimous decision for one-seed Gambit and Rogue, meaning that the Southern X-couple will laissez bon temps brûler, or whatever you say, while 4-seed Barry Allen and Iris West have already run out of time on our bracket. But before we speed along, Brendan, you wanted to say a few words on the Flash and Iris?
Yeah, I do. So I love the Flash as a character. My personal Flash and my personal favorite couple within the Flash is Wally and Linda Park. However, I want to give it for Barry and Iris, mainly for, I feel like, being one of the only couples of their generation who are actually healthy in comics. Like, they're actually good for each other solidly through and through. So it's really sweet.
100%. So thank you so much for speaking on them. We will be moving Gambit and Rogue into round 2. Next, in a matchup I swear we did not orchestrate, we've got both eyes on Cyclops, as the majority of the panel is pushing 2-seed Cyclops and Jean Grey, while I prefer 3-seed Cyclops and Emma Frost. Lisa, tell us why Scott and Jean pairing should rise from the ashes into round 2. I will harden my heart and my skin as I explain why bonds really do have more fun by stumping for Scott and Emma. I'll go first. First, my rubric for this debate. The most important facet for me is the dynamic of the relationship. Are they a good couple? Do they complement each other, or do they hold one another back? Second is the significance of the couple to comics overall. And third is, do I like them as a couple? Do they make sense to me? Scott and Emma are divisive right off the bat because it's a relationship that started as an affair. And not just an affair, a blatant, aggressive affair that started in Grant Morrison's new X-Men run, in which Emma sought to put Jean in her place by coming after her man, and Scott couldn't resist this powerful, commanding woman relentlessly pursuing him. It happens to me all the time. Ladies, please, I'm taken. A lot of people cannot get past that, but I get it. Ethically, morally, the relationship is distasteful. But taking Jean out of the equation, as she was pretty quickly when Magneto killed her for the whatevereth time, Scott and Emma actually work. They're both ambitious, ruthless leaders who care deeply about mutant rights, and at that moment in X-Men history, they were the first couple Marvel's mutants needed. Scott and Emma were a critical couple. Would mutants have survived at all without their leadership? Genuinely not sure. Scott and Emma also feel like an adult relationship to me, as in a mature coupling based on mutual respect, as opposed to Scott and Jean, which feels kind of like a high school sweetheart scenario. With that being said, have I swayed anyone? Brendan, you sticking with Scott and Jean?
I think I'm sticking with Scott and Jean. You make very great points, and I will say you also reminded me that I actually really liked the post-Morrison Scott and Emma time together. They actually were pretty great together. There's a nice little sharpness to them as a couple. They are just a high school couple, Scott and Jean, but I also love they're the messy high school couple that keeps getting back together. I think through the rest of my arguments, I'm going to largely go into I like the couples who are good for each other and make me swoon. They don't do that, but I love their drama.
They are drama. Brad, are you sticking with Scott and Jean?
This was one of the toughest choices I had to make for the entire bracket because I really do love Scott and Emma together. I think the new X-Men run for Morrison is exceptional in its storytelling and the way that they take the entirety of Scott and Jean's relationship, because there's so much gnarly stuff that happened between them before Morrison came on New X-Men. It only makes sense to shatter that relationship given everything that they went through. At the end of the day, I'm still a 13-year-old boy. And, Scott and Jean were the first couple, along with, another couple we'll talk about later, that I fell in love with as a unit. And so
Totally get it. Lisa, you sticking with Scott and Jean here.
I mean, I can't make it. Like, I know that it's part of my job is to make a case for it. You know what I mean? But if I was like their defense lawyer, like I would go like, oh, we should probably plea out, don't you think? Like,
Let's take the deal.
what I like about Scott and Jean is the drama of it. And there is an argument that can be made that outside of the X-Men, they would actually function.
Sure.
And so my example is the adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix.
Yeah.
Where they are at their highest functioning. They are actually parenting their child, which is like a fun twist for them. And even as they're going through this incredibly trying and dangerous time, their chemistry is so present. They are meeting each other where they are. I think Scott is a toxic and territorial individual. He doesn't thrive well where he feels like there's competition, and there has always been competition for Jean Grey.
Well, and Scott was always told that he was the leader of the X-Men, and he has to be a leader, but he is so ineffectual standing next to Jean Grey. And it tortures him, and he he's just suffering from the culture of masculinity, and he just needs to let that go.
Amen. No, those are great arguments. You did a wonderful job. I completely adhere to they are those messy bitches who live for drama, and that's why we love them. So I'm so happy to move Scott and Jean into round 2. Next, in another wild coincidence that I again swear we did not orchestrate, the panel is evenly split between 1-seed Scarlet Witch and Vision, and one of their queer kids, 4-seed Wiccan and his husband Hulkling. Brad, use your powers to alter reality and push Wanda and Vision into round 2. Brendan, tell us why you're here for the young and the reckless with Wiccan and Hulkling. Brad, please go first.
So, when you're talking Scarlet Witch and Vision, you immediately go to the end of their relationship, and the Scarlet Witch, they have children together. They create these children. She goes crazy. House of M. Blah blah blah. It goes to some extremely dark places. And so this is a relationship that did not work out. Yeah. That being said, before all of mutantdom is eradicated by Scarlet Witch, them as a couple were extremely sweet. And Vision, so self-reflective and insecure and, just wanting to, do the Data thing from Star Trek Next Generation, wanting to understand humanity, wanting to become human, and finding a thing you could call humanity, sentience, in the arms of the Scarlet Witch. And I think when they were functioning, it was one of the most intriguing couples in comics because it was a little taboo. It was, in pushing against that taboo, I think it opened up a lot of hearts and minds of readers. It's unfortunate how grim and awful that became, but then it also led to an incredible series, The Vision from Tom King and Gabriel Walta, which is dark and awful, but so delicious.
We love delicious dark drama. That's what comic books are, essentially, right?
Yeah.
You will believe that an android can cry. Brendan, talk to us about Hulkling and Wiccan.
They're the heartstopper of superhero comics.
Yeah, basically.
Literally, actually now thanks to casting. But even without that, they just are good YA romance. They both in and of themselves would be great coming of age stories. Put together, it's this incredibly sweet couple who's adorable, supporting each other through a whole lot of shit. And I think that is, again, one of my core metrics here was, who do I want to see together and who do I enjoy being with when they're together? These guys are right near the top of that. Because it really is like, again, I love that the drama just keeps getting higher to like galactic levels of what they have to face individually. And I just love that throughout it all, these two are always there for each other. It's so sweet. And again, on the other hand, they've never caused genocide. So
that we know of.
That we know of. But they're also, you know what, they are young. They're young.
If you haven't caused genocide, are you really an X-Man? I think
right.
not.
Fair point.
Fair.
Excellent. Lisa, where are you? Is it going to be Scarlet Witch and Vision, or is it going to be Wiccan and Hulkling?
It's tough for me. That's a really tough choice because I go to those couples for different yums. You know what I mean? And I love to see, you know, young people falling in love. Like, I did not date as a teenager, and I kind of get to live my teenagerdom again through these youths, which sounds gross, but don't take it like that. But the romance between Scarlet Witch and Vision represents the romance of the universe, the romance between science and magic, force and submission. You know what I mean? Science is how you control, and magic is something of submission. So I think that what they represent for me, is that we live in an ultimately kinky universe, and I love to see them do it.
Great argument, Lisa. You're killing it. So does that mean you're voting for Scarlet Witch and Vision?
I suppose so.
Okay. So even if I were to vote for Hulkling and Wiccan, they would actually go out because they're a 3 seed and Viz and Wanda are a 1 seed. I will say this: initially, I had voted for Hulkling and Wiccan. I don't know why I can't say Hulkling and Wiccan, but I can't. Because in my head, I was like, well, Vision and Scarlet Witch have not been together for decades, right? And so then I went back and started reading the Avengers West Coast arc where their relationship ends. It is gripping. It's so good. And up until that point, they had been this lovely fairy tale romance. And like, it's body horror. Vision is disassembled. He loses every sense of semblancy. You also have the whole element of Wonder Man off to the side being like, I will not give you my brainwaves to give him back his memories because I'm in love with you. Why won't you love me?
So good.
And then you have Wanda losing her mind fully, going crazy for like, I don't know, the 4th time at that point. It's high fucking camp, mama, and I was living for it. So as much as I love our Heartstopper, and they're very Heartstopper, I actually do think I'm going to throw it to Vision and Scarlet Witch here. So we will be moving Vision and Scarlet Witch into round 2. Next, the majority of the panel wants to keep it all on the Bat family, as they prefer 3-seed Batgirl and Nightwing. But I will stay silent no longer in my defense of 2-seed Black Bolt and Medusa. Brendan, tell us why Dick and Barbara remain a titanic love story. I'll explain why it would be inhuman to cast out our royal couple in round 1. I'll go first. I'm not going to win this, and that's okay. I'm an Inhumans apologist, and I would like to have a moment. So I don't think there's another couple like Black Bolt and Medusa on our list. They're quite literally royalty, having ruled the Inhumans of Attilan for most of their existence. Beyond that, there's an interesting dynamic between the two of them, as Medusa is Black Bolt's interpreter, the only way he's able to communicate with the subject and with others. That's a legitimately cool wrinkle to their relationship. Although we haven't seen the characters since 2018's Death of the Inhumans, it's implied that they've reverted back to their original status quo. I know they have a stench on them, both in the comics and on screen from that awful ABC show, but I love the Inhumans, and I hope that someday we get another shot at them without editorial mandates gumming up the works. I have not swayed anybody, I'm sure, but let me just check. Brendan, are you sticking here with, who are they up against? Dick and Barbara.
Yeah, I'm sticking with Dick and Barbara. I will say, as somebody who never enjoyed the Inhumans, I did read the Paul Jenkins, Jay Lee miniseries finally, and that's fantastic. I actually do have total respect for them as a couple, but yeah, I love Dick and Barbara.
Brad, you sticking with Dick and Bob?
I am, and I'm sorry. I do like Medusa and Black Bolt as a couple. I think they are incredibly unique within Marvel Comics, but Dick and Babs, I like them more.
Dick and Babs. What about you, Lisa?
Yeah, I'm sticking with Dick and Babs. It's just like a lack of fluency. I have not read enough Inhumans, and Eric, I am willing to be changed.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the 2010s Inhumans books were great because they weren't, but I think Medusa is actually an undiscovered gem who needs more attention. But that being said, we are moving Dick and Babs, I should just call them by their government names, Nightwing and Batgirl, into round 2. Speaking of Batman, the panel is currently leaning toward more Gotham City heat, courtesy of 1-seed Batman and Catwoman, but Lisa is stuck on another complicated couple, 4-seed Spider-Man and Mary Jane Watson. Lisa, why do you think Pete and MJ deserve to last in this bracket at least one more day? Triggered. Brad, tell us why the bat and the cat are so much yummier. Lisa, please go first.
When MJ and Peter met back in high school, they both represented relationship goals for each other in a way that I feel like is not talked enough about. Like, for Peter Parker, of course, he was the nerd or whatever, and he fell for the girl next door, and she is gregarious, and she is fun, and she gets him out of his shell. And at first, when she didn't know that he was Spider-Man, she still was interested and you know, hanging out with him. And she came from this incredibly traumatic, broken home. She is, even though she seems outgoing, she is just a hard shell of defense mechanisms that have been like died like an Easter egg. And Peter Parker represents this familial stability with his Aunt May. And so when they come together, they both get this level of satisfaction that I think is extremely rare for young romance. And it continues into their relationship in their adulthood. And they're all, like, when they're in a relationship, they're tremendously supportive of each other. It is, Mary Jane has her own career. She's a model sometimes. She's an actress sometimes. And, you know, of course, Peter Parker is doing his Spider-Man thing, and they're never threatened or pulled away by each other's activities. And I just love Peter and MJ. How can you not?
Yeah, but enough about Joe Quesada.
And unlike Batman and Catwoman, they actually have aligned principles. Where I feel like Batman and Catwoman, they might be able to have a very hot fling, and we know there is whips and leather involved, you know what I mean? But
just plead my case for me. Let's go. Keep going. Keep going.
But I don't think that they qualify as a couple.
A great argument. I'm going to throw it to votes because this is a 3-1. Before I do, I think we all need to just acknowledge right now, Batman and Catwoman are having the best sex of anybody on this list.
100%.
That is fire. That is 50 Shades of Grey stuff. It is off the chain. Well, actually, it's probably on a chain. Brendan, are you sticking with Batman and Catwoman? Or are you open to swinging to Spider-Man and MJ?
As you say, I'm open to swinging with Batman and Catwoman, but
Amen.
Also on this, probably Batman and Catwoman, but let's see how this ends up. I could always change again.
Brad, let's hear your argument for Batman and Catwoman. Yeah.
You know, I think with Batman and Catwoman, a lot of their story is about what are you willing to change about yourself to be with your partner. And I think we've reached a point in the comics where they can only change so much about themselves, but the conversation around wanting to be something different, to be compatible with somebody you find extremely attractive and, you know, fighting your better nature. I think that is a healthy mental exercise to do as a reader when you're reading the Batman Catwoman stories. And maybe you know, or maybe you don't even want them to ultimately end up being together, but you always want them to circle around so that you can continue to have that conversation with yourself. I think they do have the hottest sex ever. But
that's not what this bracket's about.
It's true. It's not the hottest boning comic book couples. Thank you for that point of order.
But I think it's also a thing where, you know, when we're having this conversation, when we say like Batman and Catwoman, who are we talking about really? Are we talking about the characters as they appeared in the Tom King run or the Grant Morrison run? Or are we talking about Adam West and Julie Newmar? And I think it's also interesting that no matter what interpretation of these characters you have, they inevitably come together and, you know, oppose each other over and over again.
But they don't end up together in any universe.
Well, that's the same with MJ and Peter Parker now.
Currently, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, Brendan, are you which
I'm
way are you
saying
going?
Batman and Catwoman because I am
Batwoman,
thinking that
Catwoman.
is they're their classic enemies to lovers, and I think one of the great things of them is whatever permutation, it always works and is always a romance I want to spend more time with.
There's an electricity to them that I think is always exciting. I will say, Lisa, you swayed me. I will change my vote to MJ and Cat and Spider-Man. It doesn't matter because Catwoman and Batman are actually a 1 seed, so they would advance regardless in a split decision. With that being said, we will move Batman and Catwoman into round 2. Next, the panel is currently split between DC married mainstays 2 seed Black Canary and Green Arrow and 3 seed Superman and Lois Lane. Brendan, cape for votes for Clark and Lois. Brad, do justice to Dinah and Oliver as you take aim for Canary and Arrow. Brad, please go first.
All right, I take back the thing I said about the hottest sex happening between Bruce and Selena. It actually happens between Dinah and Oliver. This is a couple, again, like, you know, if you're reading the Mike Grell run, it's wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they go to some super dark places.
Yeah.
I think also Kevin Smith's run with Phil Hester and Andy Parks, they go to some really uncomfortable places as well.
Yep.
But I think that raw attraction they have it's a fun read. And even when they are smashing together physically and mentally, coming away psychically and physically scarred, it's just something that you like to read, usually when others aren't around you. You don't read Green Arrow comics and Black Canary comics when you're on the subway, you know? You read them at home, and you enjoy them at home.
Brendan, do you want to talk to us about Superman and Lois Lane?
Yeah. First off, I feel like they're the original. They are the most iconic couple in all of superhero comics. And I mean, going back to, again, the metric is another thing. I think they're also one that they're a good dynamic couple in any version. Like, you go back to the 1950s TV show, you go back to any run of the comics almost, you definitely go to like the 1970s films or My Adventures with Superman airing now. It's always a good romance between them. Personally, my other thing is, all right, so I'm a total sucker for journalism-based bantery rom-coms. That is who they are. Just, they are forever going to have a piece of my heart of like, here is My Girl Friday, here is, well, Broadcast News isn't really a rom-com, but you get my point. Like, I just love that kind of world and that dynamic, and I want more of that. So I also think, again, I love that they're also a couple that never ceases being interesting. Like, you've never really felt, the comics have never gone too far and like, let's pair Lois Lane with somebody else or Clark with somebody else. It's always ultimately like, you know what? Whether they're in the early stages and she doesn't know his secret, they're a good couple. If they're, you know, living together and trying to figure out how to juggle it, they're a good couple. They're married for years and parents. They're an interesting couple. There's always stuff to mine of the two of them together, and it's always really charming.
Yeah, I mean, the only exception I can think is when they paired Superman off with Wonder Woman at the New 52. And, I mean, it was kind of interesting as a thought experiment, but they ultimately brought Superman and Lois back together because, I mean, after the banging was done, people were just like, yeah, but they don't actually, Clark and Wonder Woman don't actually work together. Whereas Superman and Lois always do. Lisa, where are you?
I can't remember what I originally voted because I am an individual with no integrity.
That's okay. Neither are we.
But I did find what Brendan said compelling, and if the measure is functioning in a traditional way, I feel like Lois and Clark are killing it. But Green Arrow and Black Canary are like the Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell of superheroes, where it's
a great point.
We're so cool. We don't need to be married to be a couple. We just are, and everybody can have their questions about it and go like, you're going about it wrong, but we are extremely happy together, and you're imagining us having sex right now.
Also, the only reason Superman is with Lois is because his college mermaid girlfriend died.
Yeah, that is true.
It happens to the best of us, Brad, right? Whom among us has not had a dead college mermaid girlfriend? So which way are you going, Lisa?
I think I'm going to go Black Canary.
Oh, okay.
And Green Arrow.
Well, they are the 2 seed. Superman and Lois are the 3 seed. I'm 100% with Superman and Lois here, Brendan. For the reasons you mentioned, they are the comic book couple, right? Like, they started it. If you look at, like, Crisis, what was the whole thing built around? It was Superman and Lois, right? But I can also see as a entertainment factor, Green Arrow and Black Canary give us more of that, to the point that Marvel made their own knockoff version of the two of them with Hawkeye and Mockingbird. So we will be moving Black Canary and Green Arrow into round 2. Next, the majority of the panel feels good about Bad Girls as they're pushing 1-seed Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, while I'm marveling at the reality that 4-seed Invisible Woman and Mr. Fantastic could go out in round 1. Lisa, sound the Gotham City siren as you call the argument for Harley and Ivy. I will stretch my argument and try to make sure you all see why Reed and Sue are truly a fantastic couple. I'll go first. So I don't get this vote. Harley and Ivy have the heat for sure, but Reed and Sue are foundational comic book couple. They are the first Marvel couple to get married way back in 1963's Fantastic Four Annual 3. Them being a couple is absolutely intrinsic to many of their stories, and I would argue them as characters. They are called Marvel's first family for a reason, and I absolutely think they deserve to advance here. Reed and Sue are also one of the most relatable couples on this list. If you set aside all the superpowers and sci-fi shenanigans, you have a brilliant but clueless man who fixates on his work and a caring, long-suffering wife putting up and actually running this family. We all know that couple. Heck, some of us may be in that couple. Reed and Sue have not had an easy road. In addition to tragically losing their second child, which was thankfully retconned many years later, Sue has been possessed and turned into a lusty dominatrix. Reed has died and Sue pursued by multiple suitors, including Namor. Reed engaged in a whole host of morally dubious behaviors, which very nearly led to the end of their marriage during Civil War. But the thing is, it's those issues that actually make them such a great couple to me. Some of my favorite Reed and Sue stories are the ones where they're struggling in their relationship and trying to figure out how to make it work. That's real. That's something that the people reading these books can understand, and it paints a much more realistic picture of married life than many of the other couples on this list. But that being said, I understand that Harley and Ivy are like the comic couple of the moment. Lisa, talk to us about them.
I agree that the Storm Reeds are foundational, but they're foundational in a way where the 60s-ness cannot be removed from them. And because of that, every time they've tried to rewrite Sue Storm in a way that gives her purpose and place in their relationship, she is always pushed to the side. There's a reason why he's stretchy and everywhere and she becomes invisible. They've tried to make her a scientist. It didn't work. They tried to make her an actress. It did not work. She ends up just being another person that's like, fine, I'll dress the same as you. Granted, I know that she designed those costumes in the 60s, but literally that's the only work they ever let her do.
It's a good point.
Let's talk about Harley and Ivy. They are extremely hot, as in they're hot together, and they are a hot couple right now in the comics conversation, but they are also extremely compatible in a way that is completely devoid of those kind of tired superhero relationships where, like, with Harley and Ivy, they don't always see eye to eye, but it's not in a way where like they're at odds all of the time. It's in a way where it's like, oh, they're seeing things slightly differently, so it brings depth and color into their worldview, and they give each other space to be different. Like, and they never end up in that like sidekick dynamic. They are always collaborating.
Lisa, you are doing such good arguments. You are swaying me. Brendan, where are you on this one?
Harley and Ivy all the way.
Brad, where are you?
Yeah, Harley and Ivy.
All right, you did it, man. You clobbered Reed and Sue out of here, so Harley and Ivy will continue into round 2. Finally, in round 1, it's one more unanimous decision from our panel. This one for 3-seed Alana and Marko from Image Comics Saga, which meant it was the end of a gay old time for 2-seed Apollo and Midnighter. But I do want to talk a bit about Apollo and Midnighter before we end their Stormwatch. Apollo and Midnighter were introduced in 1998 Stormwatch number 4. It was a huge deal. Writer Warren Ellis wasted little time in establishing the fact that these two characters, obvious analogs to Batman and Superman, were not just superheroes, but they were gay and they were in love. That was a genuinely huge deal at the time. North Star was the first openly gay superhero. He had just come out only 4 years prior. Now we had gay Superman and Batman, and they were 100% boning. This was massive representation. They deserve to be honored. That being said, Marko and Alana are an incredible comic book couple, and I think we made the right call here. So we will move Marko and Alana into round 2, and that's the end of round 1. We're going to take a quick break to abandon our wife and child to chase down our suddenly not dead first love in the name of romance. We'll be right back after these messages. Do you want to watch more TV? Sure, we all do. But sometimes you just don't have the time to tune in, and you're still itching to know what happened. Well, for $0 a day, you can check out the Great Pop Culture Debate episode recaps. We cover some of your favorite television franchises so you can stay up to date without even watching. Head over to the blog section of greatpopculturedebate.com and make sure you never miss a moment. And we're back for round 2 of our best comic book couple debates. Before we get into the Elite Eight, I want our panelists to share their social media and what else they're working on. Brendan, why don't you start? Where can people find you? What you got going on?
Sure. Mostly over at Blue Sky these days. So you can find me at bhay. Whatever the whole other rest of that very long handle is. But bhay. I'm also over on Instagram at Brendan Hay Writer and Threads at B_Hay42. What I really would love you to check out is if you're a Max subscriber or become a Max subscriber to watch Gremlins The Wild Batch. Season 2 Part 1 is up now. Season 2 Part 2 will be coming sometime in 2025. Also, if if you're listening to this, you probably enjoy DC Comics. Check out Brave and the Bold, issues 18 and 19. I got a Tim Drake story in there. Got another Tim Drake and Damian team up in the Valentine's Day special. Lex and the City, which I think will have just come out by the time this drops. And also, last month in January's DC Horror Presents number 4, I had an insanely gory Matter Eater Lad story that I got to co-write with friend and amazing horror comedy filmmaker Steve Kostansky. Logan Ferber drew it. It needs to be seen to be believed, so please check it out.
Love, love, love all of that stuff. So excited. And speaking of exciting, we are so excited to have Brad and Lisa here from the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast. Where can people find you guys, and can you tell them a little bit about the podcast?
Yeah, you can find us at comicbookcouplescounseling.com, on socials mostly, Blue Sky these days, at CBCC Podcast, but we're on, Instagram and Facebook and Threads and all that stuff too.
Give us a jingle jangle.
Give us a jingle jangle. Right now, we should have an episode out with Tom King going full spoilers on Helen of Windhorn from Dark Horse Comics. That's one of our favorite series from last year, and it's always fun to talk to Tom. Lisa and I actually wrote our first comic book, short story called The Vegetable. It appears in Pots and Panels, a comic cookbook anthology, and Kickstarter backers should be getting it around now. And eventually, at some point in this year, it'll be hitting comic book shops, so be on the lookout for that, and hopefully more comics work from us in the future.
Fabulous. And you also do a series of screenings at the Alamo Draft House, correct?
We do. We just screened Conan the Barbarian as part of our comic book film club. In January, we screened Akira, and in December, what did we screen? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
Fun and festive for the holidays.
Absolutely. I mean, it's green, right?
Yes.
And Raphael has red. So
Yes.
You should definitely check out their website and follow them. They're wonderful folks. And also, you guys do the convention circuit. We've seen you at San Diego Comic-Con, Awesome Con in DC, New York Comic-Con, everywhere.
So every con.
The cons
No,
that would be physically
every
possible.
con we're at. Right there. You just got to look.
You do. Well, we'll get into it. Thank you guys so much for coming and doing our little show. We really appreciate having you here. It's been a blast. You can find me at Eric Resniak on Instagram, but please follow at Great Pop Culture Debate on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok, on Blue Sky at gpcd.bsky.social or at gpcd on Mastodon. But what you really need to do right now is to sign up for our weekly newsletter, new every Tuesday at noon. It tells you about everything new in pop culture that week. Sign up by finding the link on this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com or via our link tree on any of our social media accounts. Now let's move into round 2 before we make a deal with the devil to erase our years-long relationship to save the life of a frail elderly woman. First up, fire up the Danger Room because it's an X-Men family showdown as 1-seed Rogue and Gambit are up against 2-seed Cyclops and Jean Grey. Brendan, tell us why, when it comes to the romance between Rogue and Gambit, you can't touch this. Brad, tell us why it's still summertime as you stump for Scott and Jean. Brad, please go first.
Oh, I think when Scott and Jean are allowed to function which is rarely. They are an undeniable couple. I think, you look back at some of those 70s runs, with Chris Claremont in particular, and the insight that we got into their headspace through all those beautiful thought balloons. You saw that while Scott in particular struggled with self, he was never in doubt in his love for Jean, and the love between them is so warm until other writers want to make it not so warm.
And even when they're being split up, it is always in contention with his love for Jean, or a substitute, or like the alternative.
I think,
or reactionary.
You look at the forces, the editorial forces, the writer forces, the plot forces
the Phoenix forces,
that continually pull them apart. You can yank them apart, you can kill them, you can destroy them, but they remain glued together, and that's their natural state. That's how we want it. That's what they want, and undeniable.
Brendan, talk to us about Rogue and Gambit.
They're the superhero embodiment of edging, and I think that brings a lot of joy to all of us.
It does, yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. So I did not actually like Gambit as a character, I'd say, until X-Men 97, the cartoon. In fact, the only thing, because I always found him to be kind of a try-hard kind of cool character, like with his, basically close-up magic and trench coat and whatnot. So never into him, except in one regard. I've always dug the relationship between him and Rogue. I thought it was a case of two of the hottest, most charming members of the X-Men who clearly love each other and can't actually ever really consummate it or fully commit to each other. I don't know. It's really good storytelling. It leads to a lot of really interesting choices. I find them really charming together with their ridiculous accents. I don't know. It's just they've always been a little swoony for me, which again, overcoming the huge deficit to me that is his character. Still always loved him. And then I will say I feel like a Gambit and Rogue high at the moment. In X-Men 97, they were the heart of the show to me.
Totally.
It just worked so incredibly well. So that's kind of what puts them over the top. I love Scott and Jean, as I said earlier. I'm here for them in sickness and in so much not health.
Yeah.
But
so much death.
So much death. So much death. That said, the X-Men 97 really put it over the top. I now actively root for Gambit and Rogue as characters, as a couple.
Great. Lisa, where are you on this one?
Oh, I'm Gambit and Rogue all of the way.
Yeah, I think we talked about it in round one that Scott and Jean are the messy couple, the people from high school, I think of Billy Joel's Scenes from an Italian Restaurant where they're talking, you know what I'm talking about? Where they're talking about, and I can't think of the names of the characters. Brenda and Eddie, who cannot get it together, but whatever, good luck. And there are Brenda and Eddie, and Gambit and Rogue are a much cooler couple from the 90s. They're, I don't know, give me a second, I'll come up with a pop analog, but they're the cool kids that you actually want to get together, and they had to go through a really difficult road to get there, and that's why it was so satisfying. When they finally fixed Rogue's powers after decades, and actually got those two crazy kids together, and I actually think they work really well as a married couple. So I'm also giving it to Gambit and Rogue, which means Scott and Jean are out. Next, the bulk of the panel is still swinging with 2-seed Batgirl and Nightwing, but I think 1-seed Scarlet Witch and Vision are both magical and wondrous. Lisa, why are you still falling over these caped crusaders? I will try to preemptively avenge these doomed lovers. Lisa, please go first.
To me, Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson make an excellent comic book couple because they initially bonded over this desire to be differentiated from their parental figures. Barbara is a cop's daughter. Nightwing is this eternal, protege. He works so hard to strike out on his own. And when their romance started, they were both suffering from this deep desire to be seen. And in that, they saw and recognized the specialness in each other. And I feel as a crime-fighting duo, Babs brings this dazzling intellect and grit, while Dick has those crazy acrobatic skills and also the showmanship. And they're another set of lovers that share a kink. They are both constantly accidentally getting tied up together, and I think that they're kind of into it, and I'm into it for them. I think they're very cute together.
Yeah, like, just admit you're into the Shibari play. Like, who are we kidding here? It's been like 50 years. Brad, where are you on this one? Is it going to be... we haven't really talked about... We talked about Vision and Scarlet Witch in the first round, but are you Babs and Dick, or are you more leaning towards Viz and Wanda?
I think Lisa's just confirms that I have to go with Dick and Babs. But, for the reasons I said earlier, I really do love Scarlet Witch and Vision together.
One of the things that occurred to me when we were talking about them earlier is that they're one of our most finite couples on this list. Like, they're done, and they've been done for decades. And it's actually kind of interesting to me that, to my knowledge, someone please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Marvel has tried to get them back together in a serious way since the mid-'80s. Am I right?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's remarkable restraint on Marvel's part, especially since you want that synergy. Brendan, you were going to say something?
No, I was going to say, I think I would bet a lot of the love for them has come from the MCU. Because I think it's not nearly as destructive in the MCU of a couple as it was in comics.
Great point, yes. Brendan, where are you on this one?
Babs and Dick all the way. One, on top of everything else that's been said, and also wanting to be their third, I love Haley, a.k.a. Bitewing. They have an amazing pet. I wouldn't want to put any shame on this couple for her.
And we'll talk about this when we talk about them in the Final Four, but there was, of course, another very significant or two relationships that Dick had in between his Barbara relationships, and he still went back to her. So we'll get to that in a second, but we are going to move Nightwing and Batgirl into round 3. Next in a battle of two of the horniest couples on this list, it's a DC smackdown between 1 seed Batman and Catwoman and 2 seed Black Canary and Green Arrow. I had no idea where this one was going to go, so I'm just going to go around the horn and get some votes here. Brad, where are you on this one?
I think I'm going to stick with Green Arrow and Black Canary. Both two incredibly hot couples, like you were saying. But they have the trick arrows, and I just think that would be more fun in bed.
Catwoman's got a whip.
Ollie has a whip arrow.
That's true. I'm sure he does. And we're not going to tell you where he puts that. Lisa, where are you? Are you on Batwoman? That's a whole different conversation. Batman and Catwoman, or are you with Green Arrow and Black Canary?
Green Arrow and Black Canary. And in fact, I bet if Catwoman and Batman took some tips from Ollie and Dinah, they might actually be able to function.
Like, can we also say, like, there had to have been a key party in the 70s,
yes,
possibly with the actual key DC villain that involved these two couples. There's no way Ralph Dibny and Sue Dibny were... Can we write this? Brendan,
I was going to say, I think you just actually landed on the great untold story.
This is a crisis. Marriage crisis.
It's, I was going to say, the Ice Storm meets DC superheroes is the story I always wanted.
Yeah, and then you have someone questioning their sexuality after one passionate night with elongated man. But Brendan, there you go. Yeah, Brendan, talk to me. Where are you? Is it going to be Black Canary and Green Arrow, or Batman and Catwoman?
I will say, from previous arguments, I am now desperately wishing a Green Arrow and Black Canary movie was made in 1989, starring Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn. We missed that as a culture. That said, Batman and Catwoman.
So we have 1 for the Bat and the Cat, and we have 2 for Green Arrow and Black Canary. Bat and Cat are a 1 seed, and Black Canary and Green Arrow are a 2. The issue here is that Batman and Catwoman very rarely actually get together, right? It's that electric charge. They're really sexy to watch, but they rarely get it together. They do in Earth 2, right? Because that's how we have a Huntress. But in the main continuity, they don't. And Green Arrow and Black Canary do. They come together, they split apart. They come together, they split apart, mostly because Ollie's a jerk. So I think of the two of them, the more functional couple is Black Canary and Green Arrow. So for that reason, I will go with that group, and they will move them to the Final Four. Finally, in round 2, the majority of the panel is pushing another Bat-related couple, 1 seed Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, but I'm on the run with 3 seed Alana and Marko from Saga. Brad, why do these dangerous women tick all your boxes? And that's not a lesbian euphemism, but maybe it is now.
I think it comes down to, without going into spoilers, that Marko and Alana's relationship's too sad. And I can't deal with it. And Harley and Ivy, the other thing we really haven't talked about, I mean, Lisa touched on it a little bit, is they are just such good friends. And you go back to the Batman the Animated Series, and when they were first paired up to like do hijinks together, they clearly just loved being with each other and sharing this space and maybe being a little codependent, highly relatable, honestly. But like, to me, at the core of their relationship is this friendship that, you know, I think they both desperately needed. And it was wonderful to watch that friendship turn into something more.
Their goals.
Yeah.
Yeah. They always say be gay, do crime. And I feel like with Harley and Ivy, it started out with do crime, be gay.
Yeah.
And so I love that for them, right? Subverting stereotypes. I do want to talk about Alana and Marko, and I am going to get into spoilers because at this point, like it's years ago, so we're just going to do it.
It's just dramatic.
It's super dramatic. In my opinion, I think they are, in fact, the most realistic couple on this list. I said this before with Reed and Sue, but, like, we all know Alana and Marko, right? Like, they are deeply in love. They have no idea what they're doing. There are times when they cannot stand one another, but at their core, they are madly, passionately in love and in this together. Reading them, I actually found so inspiring. Like, I was moved by them on multiple occasions. Like, I'm dead inside. I was actually emotional over reading these comics until it became incredibly sad.
Yeah.
In issue 54, Marko dies. And if I'm being honest, the book has not felt the same ever since. That couldn't be intentional on the part of Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. A death like that in your real life changes everything, and his specter looms large over this series. But that speaks to how critical the couple is/was. Once it was brutally ended, the entire series has felt almost like a half-life. These characters are not living, they're surviving. And that's deeply sad, but it's also kind of beautiful. Brendan, where are you on this one?
Basically same on all accounts here. Really love both couples. You know what? I might actually throw it to Alana and Marko because that is a case like that. When they were together, it was so good.
Lisa, where are you on this one?
Marko might be dead, but Marko and Alana are not done. And I do feel like that kind of marital connection between them is still kind of like hemorrhaging. You know what I mean? Like she's really like, you know, yearning for that connection. And we're getting this story from the perspective of Hazel.
Yeah.
And we know that Hazel makes it, and it is because of the love of both of her parents. And my hope for the rest of Saga is that Alana does find a way through her mourning to still feel connected to Marko. And so I think because of that, I'm going to go for Marko and Alana.
Okay, so this is actually a bit of an upset here because Harley and Poison Ivy are the 1 seed. If it's 3 of us on Marko and Alana, they are continuing. Brad, are you okay with that?
I mean, I'm okay with that. I understand it. I don't like it.
That's all right. Welcome to the great pop culture debate, Brad. I hope you survive the experience. So we will be moving Marko and Alana into the final 4. And with that, we have our final 4. We're going to take a quick break to totally reboot our continuity. We'll be right back after these messages.
Listen up, all you groovy cats and cool kittens. Are you tired of being the silent spectator in the grand circus of pop culture? Well, fret not, my fabulous friends. It's time to strut your stuff and shake up the status quo by taking our polls. Let your opinions sashay down the runway of pop culture history like a fierce drag queen at Mardi Gras. Trust me, darlings, it's more thrilling than a game of Twister with the cast of the Brady Bunch. So stop sipping your lukewarm tea and join the fabulous fun. Head to greatpopculturedebate.com and find the polls section. You know I love a good poll.
And we are back with the final 4 of our best comic book couple debate. At this point in the show, I always take a step back to see if it shook out the way I expected it to. First up, we have 1 seed Gambit and Rogue versus 2 seed Batgirl and Nightwing, 2 seed Green Arrow and Black Canary versus 3 seed Alana and Marko. I find it interesting that in a bracket that started out as mostly Marvel, we have 1 Marvel couple, 2 DC couples, and an Image couple. I love that. I would love to have an additional couple in there, an additional company in there just to give us a little bit more roundedness. All right, let's get into this around the horn. 1 seed Gambit and Rogue versus 2 seed Batgirl and Nightwing. I would like to start with Brendan. Where are you going?
Really tough. These would be my final 2, but if I have to go 1, I prefer Nightwing and Babs.
Okay. Lisa, where are you on this one?
I'm going to go Gambit and Rogue, and the reason is this. These are superhero couples, and while I do recognize members of the Bat family as superheroes, they do not have powers.
Do we not consider
just
Nightwing?
a matter of greatness of powers, I'm going with Gambit and Rogue.
Is that what you want to put out in 2025?
You know what?
No powers.
Nightwing's ass is a power.
I was going to say, is Nightwing's delicious, moist butt not a superpower?
It does change the temperature of a room.
It does.
You do
It
make an
does.
excellent point. And I don't agree with anything I've said this entire episode. So
Yeah. I don't agree with anything I say in any of these episodes,
but
Lisa.
I do think like Gambit and Rogue, just because like if you go like, well, what kind of couple would you want to be at a dinner party with? And what kind of a couple are you going to want to read? I love reading Gambit and Rogue.
That's fair.
That's a great point. Brad, where are you on this one?
I think what's ultimately going to end up sealing the deal for me is where they are right now in comics and the stories that are being told with them. I think if you had asked me this question a year ago, I would have been like, I'm just loving Nightwing and Batgirl together so much right now. But it's 2025, and I think I'm preferring what Gail Simone is doing with Gambit and Rogue. I really love the love that Gail Simone has for them as a functioning couple.
One of the things that I find so interesting is, and maybe it's the X-Men 97 of it all, or maybe it's just the way that I feel like comics work. When I'm reading the Uncanny issues right now, I keep waiting for something bad to happen to them. I keep waiting for Gambit to die, and I'm nervous about it. If you have successfully made me nervous about the success of your couple, you're doing it right. I am invested in this couple. Nightwing and Babs, I do want to talk about it. We kind of alluded to this before. There was a very long stretch where they were not together. They got together when they were teenagers, when he was Robin and she was Batgirl. It was a very sweet kind of puppy love situation. It was adorable. And then for the entire 80s, Nightwing had a very hot, like the Cha-Cha Di Gregorio of the DC universe in Starfire.
Yeah.
And he ended back up with Sandy, right?
Yeah.
And like there is something very sweet about that. But I think I tend to lean with Gambit and Rogue here in that I agree. I find them more interesting. And the dinner party question, that Rogue and Gambit and a dinner party would get loosey-goosey. They would be all over each other and playing footsie on the table with everybody. Yes, Lisa.
2 drinks in, you're not going to understand a word that they say.
Nope. It's just going to be a screed of unintelligible Southern accents, and I'm going to love every second of it. So I think we're on Gambit and Rogue here, correct? So we will move them to the final 2. Next, it's 2-seed Green Arrow and Black Canary versus 3-seed Alana and Marko. I would like to start with Brad. Where are you on this one?
I gotta go with Green Arrow and Black Canary, just because I'm not interested in Bummer Town right now. I think they are maybe not the most functioning couple. I think if who's winning marriage, I think Marko and Alana are winning marriage. But they're dead. That relationship's gone. There's still hope for Green Arrow and Black Canary.
And fishnets. We haven't even talked about fishnets.
And fishnets.
We have a saying on our music episodes on this show, no bummers, only bops. And I feel like that's what you're applying to this. Yeah. Brendan, where are you on this one?
Look, as an emo fan at heart, I'm going back to the bummers. And it's actually, look, I like Ollie and Dinah. I will say I've always slightly enjoyed their characters slightly more apart than together. I've liked her best in Birds of Prey. I've liked him best probably bouncing off of like a more conservative traditional superhero. But Alana and Marko, goddamn, they broke my heart and I love them for it.
Boy, these are good arguments. What do you think, Lisa? Where are you?
I am so conflicted.
Yeah.
I'm like fully in decision paralysis mode.
Yeah.
Our marriage depends on this.
I know. At least our evening depends on this. I like what Brendan said about like enjoying Green Arrow and Black Canary better apart, because I might actually, like, when I actually think about it and do charts and graphs, I might actually agree. And like Marko and Alana, even when they're apart, they're together. You know what I mean? So I'm so sorry, my sweet love, Brad Gullickson. I'm choosing Marko and Alana. I'm just doing it.
So sad.
I'm just doing it.
Sad.
I'm so sorry, my sweet love, Brad Gullickson. I'm also choosing Marko and Alana.
You all go enjoy The Cure. I'm going to go listen to the Donnas.
You clocked that one. You got me. So it gives us a final two of 1 seed Gambit and Rogue versus 3 seed Alana and Marko, a Cinderella story if we ever had one. I would like to start. Actually, let's start with Brad because I have a sense of where you're going to go here. Where are you going to vote?
like now that we're here.
Yep.
Oh, living in Bummertown. I get it. I mean, Saga is so well constructed, so well executed. It is a perfectly beautiful comic. Gambit and Rogue, they are beautiful together. A lot of tragedy, a lot of darkness in their history too. They've survived a lot as well. You could easily make a case for Rogue and Gambit being a Bummertown story as well. But now that we've gone into Bummertown, I'm staying in Bummertown. I'm going Marko and Alana.
I love it. Lisa, where are you on this one?
I think I'm going to go Gambit and Rogue. And
What the
not
hell?
because I'm a contrarian.
Do you guys know any comic book couples counselors that I could...
Oh, no.
I'm just kidding.
The comics counsel us. But
Yep.
to me, like, the basis of Rogue and Remy's relationship is such a story of, like, healing, you know, where Rogue had this really founded fear of rejection if she was vulnerable at all. And Remy had this desire for this unavailable thing. And he pursued it so aggressively. I would say aggressively, maybe problematically. But then once they became this couple and we got more into Gambit's past and how he was really convinced that he was a bad person.
Because he was.
He was. But, like, Rogue understands that even good people can make really terrible, sad choices. And she just had this heart that is just so full of forgiveness and buoyancy. And then when you see them together, they're just pure joy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna
That's
go.
what I was saying about Dinah and Holly.
I know. I do like. May I reiterate? I stand by nothing that I say.
100.
That's how this whole podcast is.
That's
It's
right.
great.
We say hot takes with low stakes. That's literally what we do. So absolutely. Brendan, where are you on this one?
Yeah, this is definitely ask me tomorrow. My answer would change. For today, I will stick with Alana and Marko.
I'm with Remy and is it Anna or is it what are we going with?
Can't
her
name
name?
her.
Yeah, right. I don't even know. Rogue and Gambit for me for the reasons that I think that Lisa just elucidated, and they have gone through so much tragedy, but at the end they came out of it stronger, and that's couple goals, right? Like shit's gonna happen. In the case of Alana and Marko, that might include getting killed. That's hard to get past. But I mean, Rogue and Gambit have gone through it and will continue to go through it, but they have continued. So I believe we have 2 for Rogue and Gambit, 2 for Alana and Marko. Are you sticking with Alana and Marko, Brad?
Yes.
Brendan, are you sticking with Alana and Marko?
I'll make this easy. I think you made a good point of surviving it. Kind of actually a couple that can keep getting through the terrible dark shit, being turned into horsemen of the apocalypse and whatnot, and staying together. That's real. So I'll flop.
All right, so there you have it, folks. Our pick for the best comic book couple is Rogue and Gambit. Do you agree? Do you think we've been manipulated into this decision by Mr. Sinister? Tell us how you really feel by leaving a comment on this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com or find us on Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, TikTok, or Mastodon. While you're there, make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast so you can hear about what new debates are coming soon, vote in open polls, and even decide which topics we tackle next. If you really enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to like and rate it on whatever platform you listen on. I want to say thank you to my panel, and thank you especially to our special guests, Brad and Lisa from Comic Book Couples Counseling. Again, it was such a delight to have you guys. Please go check them out on their show, at their website. Thank you for listening. If you loved what you heard, please consider supporting us on Patreon, where you get even more exclusive content and you get episodes a whole day early. We hope you have a good one, and remember, everyone is entitled to their wrong opinions. Excelsior!